this lesson is a tutorial which is in Dropbox, in Staccato Spring Course Edward Week 2, and then it's called Sinatra Active Record Tutorial. Just open up that HTML file and it looks like this. It's a tutorial someone else wrote, but it's conveniently exactly on the topic that we want to do, so I'm just gonna steal it. Unfortunately, their website is down, so I took a copy off archive.org and fiddled with it a bit to fit what we were doing better. We're just going to go through it. Well, actually, I'm going to take a slightly different route on the same topic, but then later on in the afternoon, when you're redoing the same thing, this is a reference. There is also in Google Drive a couple more tutorials on the same topic. So if you get stuck, you can look at those and compare them for references. Because this is quite a big topic, so it's going to be spread out over several days. There's quite a lot of moving parts to it, so that's kind of why. Oh yeah, more than likely when we're doing the typey through, it's all going to go horribly wrong and break, so just yell and I will come over and look at stuff. Alright.
Where's the document for?
That is in Google Drive and it's called Week 2. Oh, actually this is the link that doesn't work anymore. Okay, and if all of the setup worked, Ruby server RB, we should be starting with just a basic page. Oops, where is it gone? Test. Just a page called test that shows I am working. And what we want to get to is like kind of a mini blog that we can have a form. We type in some stuff and then hit save and then show, hey, here are the recent posts. But there's a bunch of setup stuff we need to do first. What are those? I guess the first one we need to do is in the gem file. We need to install some more gems. Oh, no, that should be Sinatra. I got that wrong. So we want gem Sinatra contrib. I'm going to copy and paste mine because I'm cheating. Oh, let's get rid of some of this. Yep, here we go. And we want 3 gems. So SQLite 3 is the actual database engine. Active Record is like the connection layer, so to connect the database to the app. Tux we will come to in a bit. One of these things, it's easier to show it than to explain it. Well, basically it's IRB but with more stuff. Nope, not even slightly. a good idea to keep them consistent just to make it look nice, but it doesn't really matter. Alright, and when that worked, you should be able to do bundle and it'll install them all. Big and red. Sorry, maybe it's the source thing. Yeah. You can copy and paste it from the terminal. Yeah, first error, it says hey, copy this one. I still don't know why it doesn't sometimes do that.
Yeah, I'm just to get the app URL for the regions. That's it.
Okay. So if everything went to plan, did everybody get them installed? Oh, okay. Right, so we now have everything installed, but we need to use it in the actual file. Sinatra active record, okay. So again, we need to do require sinatra active record. Let's see. Yep. Oh, give me 2 seconds. Yeah, no, we're good. So we don't need to load SQLite because active record will do it for us. But then the next thing is also to tell it, I shouldn't have deleted that. We need to tell it what database file, and I'll explain what that means is in a second. So databases can be a bit magic. SQLite is one of the more simple ones. That is, it stores all the data in a file. And to you, when you're like kind of poking at it, it'll look like an Excel spreadsheet. But behind the scenes, it keeps all the data in this file somewhere. It's not a file you ever really want to open, so I'll show you another one. If you ever open it, it looks like just junk. So there's no point like looking in it to try and read it. It takes the data you give it and compresses it and rearranges it into its own format. So you never really have to worry about it, but you do need to tell it where to find it. And one neat thing about the way this setup works with active record is if it doesn't exist, it will create it. And if it does exist, it will open it. So we never really have to worry about like...
Just in the folder, that file would be...
Yep. At the moment, so if I did like slash home slash Edward slash project slash whatever, we could tell it create it in this exact folder. If I don't, it just will create it in the same folder. you'll probably need to restart your server. And when you do, you should see it's created a file called dbsqlite. Okay, that's a good point. The beginning bit is going to be a bit like, here's a bunch of disconnected steps that make no sense, but then eventually kind of comes together to make a thing. And the beginning bit is just for us to connect to the database and get it set up ready for us to put in data, which is what we're doing now.
The file's just called database?
I called mine DB. You can call it anything.
No, I mean, no. In the file, in the folder, it shows up as database.
Mine doesn't show up.
You restart your server.
Database nothing.
Oh, you don't have the require sinatra active record. So don't forget you also need this line.
Yeah, okay, so I have this one called database. Oh wait, oh, that's one is weird. Okay, this is probably fine, it's probably stored in this place, isn't it? Save as. Should be served here. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, run it again. Okay, now here it is. So what?
So is there?
Completely empty?
Apparently so. His is empty, and I think that's because we haven't put any data in yet.
Completely empty. Database file.
It seems so. Mine looks empty too, so I think that's good. Okay, this is the bit where you need Firefox installed, if you have it. So
How do we verify if the add-on is installed? Is there
Uh,
a symbol somewhere or?
you should see over in the top bar a tools, and then in tools is SQLite Manager.
Ah, yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, how many of these do I have open?
Which one?
Tools.
Shows directly on the tools? Maybe I need to restart it.
Yeah, you need to restart it.
Okay, and
So if after you restart the browser,
Yeah.
and then it's under tools.
But it already, I started it earlier.
No, in Firefox.
Makes sense.
okay, so one bit that is, well, I guess not weird, but just specific about databases is there's two parts to it. There's the structure and the data. Actually, I'll come back to that. Actually, let me just show you what a existing database looks like. So this is from a previous project. And the way you store a database, it's very, very similar to Excel, but like stricter. And you have tables. So I have a product table and a user table. And then inside that, it just looks like an Excel spreadsheet. I have columns and rows. So product number 2, its name is Apple, category is food, its price is 10, da 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 da. And that's the structure that most databases follow. Same again with users. I have a bunch of columns, username, age, email, and a bunch of rows, in this case just one. And this is looking at the DB file from a different project, just to show you what it looks like. Okay, yeah, so that's what the summary of a database is. There are different databases that use different kind of structures and concepts, but this is like the most common one. And there's two parts to it. There's that structure of like what are the columns and the data. And generally you split those, that like your server app only ever plays with the data but never changes the structure. The reason being is that the structure is quite, because it's much more strict than Excel, if you start changing the structure just all over the place, everything explodes. Because if you've written some of your code to expect that it's product.name and you change it to product.title, the old code explodes because it's still looking for name. So generally changing the structure is something you don't do in your app directly. There's a few different ways of doing it. We're going to get to the kind of Railsy way later, or maybe tomorrow. But for the moment, we're going to do it in this SQLite tool. And okay, so let's open up your own one. There's a little open icon somewhere. And which is this? No, not that. Oh, what? So just find it, open it, and you'll see there are no tables. And that's fine. So that's
What do we open the views folder of our
that DB SQLite file. Which kind of brings you to another point about databases, that usually the pattern is like the database sits on its own and like other people talk to it. So your app, the server RB, can talk to this file, but so can the SQLite Firefox thing. And so can a third app and a fourth app and a fifth app. And as far as the database is concerned, like it's just its own thing. It's just sitting there, people ask it how many users do you have, and it tells them. And it's, so as far as it's concerned, it's quite disconnected from everything else. It's never worrying about HTML or what you're going to do with the data. As long as you ask in the right format, it gives you back an answer. Yeah, so you can kind of like think of it as its own self-contained thing. Okay, so if you've opened it up, let's create a table. Its name, what do we call it? Let's call it posts. What do we got? Title, body. Let's have an author ID. We're not going to use it just yet. Body. Let's use text integer. Wait. And we need one called ID, which is going to be a bit odd. Actually, ideally you want ID to be the first one, but it doesn't really matter. And click these things. It should be a primary key, auto ink, and let's make it unique. And I'll explain what that means later. Is that everything we need for a blog post? Oh, okay, let's put category. And created at, which should be a date time, and updated at, which should also be a date time. So in general, just what we're doing is to like just tell it what is the structure, like what are the columns. In Excel, you can like just type stuff anywhere, but the database is like, nope, I want to know exactly what and where. And that's partly because it makes it more reliable, that you're then definitely sure it's called title and not name or blah blah blah. And it also helps the database to optimize stuff. The database engines are built for, well, basically built for putting in and getting out data. That like they're really like, they've tweaked everything possible to figure out how do I give back the data quickest, like even to the point where it figures out where on the hard drive will I be able to get back the response quickest, and I will try and put the data there. Or like making sure it's all in a row, so when the hard drive is spinning it goes like over the right ones in the right order. So just it does its own crazy internal optimizations. Okay, it's going to say, hey, do you want to do this thing? We hit yes. And now if we look in posts, it should look like table body ID. I can move my ID to the left. Everybody got that? Okay, so we can add stuff in here. Eventually we want to add it through the website, but let's just get some test data in. Title, first post, so just fill in all this stuff with junk. Some body, author ID. Most of these you can leave blank. The ID it will pre-fill for you, or it'll fill in at the end. Category news, and you can leave the created app and update blank for the moment. Oh, this app has a horrible user interface. So after you've clicked OK, it brings you back to the previous thing, so it looks...
It says something else.
Yeah, it's just saying, do you want to...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'll pop up, do you want to do this? Just hit OK, and you end up back where you started, which is a little odd. But you should see in the background, it's created a post. Okay, so everybody got one post?
Yeah.
Alright.
How'd you bring ID to the front? Just
You can drag these things around. Actually, that's part of what I meant by it does its own internal thing. That like, from our perspective, it's like on the left or the right, but internally it's like,
wherever.
yeah, who knows where. So that's also why it doesn't really matter what order you define these in, because internally it doesn't even pay you any attention. Okay, but so we have data in the database. What would be cool is if we could use it in the app and start putting it, doing the two things of one of like displaying the data that we have and also put in new data. So let's jump back to server RB for a while. So we've already told it, here's how you connect to the database. The next bit gets a bit magic. Actually, the next bit gets exceptionally magic. Where am I going? And this is the weird magic that we do. Oh, this says create a product model so Sinatra can find it in the database. Oh, actually no, wait, I'll do something first. Oops. So you guys don't need to type this, I'm just going to fiddle what just happened there. Posts.
We shouldn't change ours too?
No, not yet. I'm going to just show something and then come back. Okay, so databases use their own language called SQL. I should just find some examples. Okay, so remember I mentioned the database sits on its own, and our server RB can connect to it, and the Firefox thing can connect to it, and anything else can connect to it. The reason why that works is because it has this like its own defined language called SQL. That's why it's called SQLite. And SQL looks like this. Don't worry too much about understanding it, but just basically it's just this new language, a separate one. So create table blah, insert into table blah these values, select blah from this table. And it's neat, it's really powerful, but it's also quite annoying. What would be much nicer is if we could type Ruby. Problem is the database doesn't understand Ruby. If we start talking to that, it just goes, no, you should be telling me, hey, select everything from the station table where 50 is less than the average temperature and the station ID is blah. Okay, so we want Ruby, but it wants SQL. So what do? We use this nifty thing called active record, which we've stolen from Rails, which is the other reason we're doing this. That this is a pattern that will happen in Rails that we want to like take out and learn on its own. And that's what the active record thing is. That the database talks one language and Ruby talks another. So we tell active record in Ruby what we want, and then it figures out how to talk to the database and get the right thing. And also vice versa with the response. The database will give a response in its format, which we can't really use in Ruby directly, so active record will turn that into like hashes and objects for us to play with. It works really, really well. Has some flaws when you get to a really, really big app, but that's, I don't know, a worthwhile price. The flip side, well, I guess the downside to active record is that it's really, really magic. Because of that translation, that when you talk to the database directly, it's like what you ask for is what you ask for, whereas this is more like, we kind of vaguely tell active record, hey, it would be nice if I could have a thing that was kind of like this, and then it goes, yeah, sure, I'll figure that out, and behind the scenes suddenly like 600,000 things happen and it comes back with the response. So it's very like behind the scenes, tons of things happen. But on the other hand, it is easy to use. So it's very magic and you'll never understand why it's working, but it's easy to make it work. So for example, this line is like super crazy, super magic. Don't really worry about understanding it, but just know it's saying like, okay, we had a product table, I want a Ruby thing called product, and hook it up to the active record thing. Oops, don't do that one. Okay, so now we've done two of the steps. We've connected to the database with this line. We've told it, hey, there's going to be a table called products. Hook this up to my Ruby app. But we still haven't done anything with it. So let's create a basic page. Oops, not that one. I'd make a basic page just to print out those products. Do end, and let's just do product.first. Okay, give me a second. I just want to try this and see what happens. Yee.
Should that be just posts again?
Yes, it should. Alright, I am dumb. This should not be product, this should be posts. No, post. Okay, I'm just going to test it works. Yep, alright, that'll do. Okay, so this is still temporarily a bit hacky. But in the beginning, I just want to see, can I print out anything? And I'll explain this syntax a bit in a minute. But actually, you can already see, even if you've never programmed the post dot first, if you know you have blog posts, that is probably going to get you the first blog post, which is the nice thing. So just to compare it to the SQL examples, you would normally have to do some like crazy select da 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 da. This is not so easy to read. Post dot first, quite nice. Okay, but anyway, enough rambling. So we should have a get with a page, post dot first. This is just to turn it into a more readable format. And when you go to that page, you should see your title, your body, and your category. So give that a go, see if it explodes. Okay, everybody got that? Cool. Okay, so it's still quite basic, obviously. Okay, so we need to do something boring next, because we want to set up this tux thing. And what you want to do is find this tutorial and search for this rconfig.ru.
Where did you find the tutorial?
It's in, oh, is it here? It's in Dropbox, Edward, week2, sinatra, yes. And basically copy the contents of this and put it in a file called config.ru. I have no idea. Oh no, it means rack up. Or it stands for rack up, but that's a really long and pointless story.
Which one did you inside?
Oh, what was the question? So it's in config.ru. I mean, you can type it out. I think we actually need to change this app to server though, because the tutorial assumes we're calling an app to make tux work. And the reason why we're doing it, so we have IRB, and you can type Ruby on IRB, and that's neat. But we never really connected IRB to our app. Whereas now we would kind of like to be able to do that. That I want to be able in IRB to play around with these posts. Because IRB is really good for like interactive fiddling. Like when you don't quite know what you want to do yet, to just load up IRB and start typing and see what happens. And Tux is like IRB, but it will connect to the Sinatra app. And that's what this config.ru file is. It's basically just telling it how to find stuff. Like we're saying, load the server and run stuff. So it's not really important to understand how this file works, just to know it makes Tux work. And I'm just gonna check that works. Alright, cool. Okay, so if you've got this config.ru and you open a new terminal, so you might want to keep the server RB running in one tab and create a second one. And then run tux should see an IRB thing. But now when you do post.last, you should see your post. Can you look at the config dialog? Hmm, can you have ls?
Hmm? Yes.
Oh, yeah, you need to see the one deeper into database stuff. Alright, everybody.
Does it actually know that it's this table and not another table? Since we call it now here post and not posts in the
That bit I will come to eventually. Well, okay, I'll give it a quick answer and then we'll come back to it in more detail. Because we called this post, so one thing about active record. So the question was, how does this know? We call the table posts, and this is called post.
Yeah.
How does it know the connection? So active record. So remember we called the views folder views, and the gem file is gem file, and there's a few things that you have to give them the right name, and they just magically work. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. So we had to tell it where the database is, because it didn't know, but we didn't have to tell it there's a post table, because this is using like the magic naming structure.
What if we have several of them?
We do one for each. Comment. So again, I'm going to come into this in more detail, but it's basically like when you follow the right naming structure, that's where the magic happens, that it knows if this is called this, then that bit is called that, and then when I connect them I need to do this. So yeah, we're going to cover like all of the different rules that it uses, but that's the general gist.
So post is a magic word.
It's more that if we create something called post, it knows to look for a table called posts with an S.
that's more singular plural.
Yep. And the rules are a bit weird and confusing, like this one is singular, this one is plural. Sometimes I'm not sure when the rule is. Like for example, we could do set table thing that is not post. So if I called this rename table, actually let's do elephant. Okay, well you can imagine I've just renamed the table. I don't really want to. So for some reason I put all my posts in a table called elephant. I could tell it. But if I don't and just keep everything sensibly named, it just finds it. Okay, but I'm going to come back to that one, so don't worry about it too much. Because at this point I kind of want to show off what we can do, and then kind of work back to how it works. So if you've got tux, and you've got post.last, yeah, I should do post.last. No, actually don't do that. We can also do post.last.title. Like I can start to do like the same way we did like twitter.search.last. I don't know, text.upcase or user.screenname. We can do the same thing here. We can start combining this into our Ruby stuff. Equals. So I can put things into variables, and then I can do hello. And And so at this point, now that I've got it out of the database, it's literally just a totally normal Ruby object. And I can do all of the stuff that I could do before. I can pass it to functions, I can ask it questions, I can make it upcase, downcase. And the general format is like when you, again, this is something you just pick up by examples, but usually it's post dot something will get you a post. Actually, okay, wait. So my post equals post dot first, and then I can do my post dot title or my post dot body.
It's a hash, right? Not a hash.
It's an object, so it's similar to a hash, but different. Not sure how to explain that at this point. I don't know, I guess a hash is very like simple, in that a hash is just like key value, key value, key value, and you can put stuff in and pull stuff out. Whereas an object is more complex, like an object can have methods inside it, it can have, I don't know, I guess it's more like an encapsulated thing. Like an object knows what it is. If I do my post.class, it knows I am a post. And you'll also notice from the magic that this active record thing has figured out what the columns are. Though we also never had to tell it, like, what is the structure of the post table. It went off on its own accord and asked the database, hey, what is in this table? And basically now it knows for itself. And every time you type something on the terminal with Active Record, it shows you behind the scenes what it said to the database. And usually the thing it told the database is more complicated than what you typed. So post.first is easy to type and understand. Select posts from posts, order by posts, and limit one. Okay, it's not terribly crazy, but it's definitely a lot more typing. We can do, oh, where did I write this down somewhere? Okay, I just put some notes. Oops. So I'm going to try and write this down somewhere at some point. But you can do a bunch of stuff, like I can say post.count, like how many posts exist. It tells me, yeah, okay, you've got one. Instead of last, I can do crazy stuff, like, okay, we've only got one post, so this won't really make any sense, but I can say, give me all of the posts where the category is news. It goes, okay, there's one, because there's only one post. So there's all this stuff, or I can do, give me the posts dot order created at. So I can say, hey, give me all the posts, but make sure you order them. So you don't need to remember all these right now, but it's more to show that you can do almost anything you want with it, or almost anything you can think of doing somewhere there's a setting for it. Oh, actually, well, I'll show you all of this stuff is listed in humongous detail in the Google Drive thing again. There's 2 links. And these have all of the detail on all of the different things you can do. Like, I don't know. All of the different ways you can order it. So it's quite a big file. So you probably don't really want to read through it all in one go, but I don't know, if there's anything you see me do and I go through it too quickly, it'll be in here somewhere. And there's again, slightly too detailed file that does the basics. Okay, but anyway, all the references are out there somewhere. I'm going through this quite quickly the first time, but we're going to do it over and over and over again, so that's okay. Okay, so that was getting some out. How about we put one in? So if I want to create a post, so if you guys type this one, and this is going to look very similar to a hash, but is not quite a hash, which is confusing, but I don't know, that's how it works. So you do the same key value, like title equals from tux, body equals another post, and category, I don't know, art. Okay, actually now if you hit enter, it should, oops. If you hit enter, you'll see a big blob of text. That generally means it worked. If you see, there was an error, that means it doesn't. This is unrelated. But if that worked and you do post.last.title, you should see your new title. This next bit you don't have to type, I'm just going to do it as a demo. X equals woo. So I can set up a bunch of variables. And put them in that way. So again, this is just normal Ruby stuff that I can, like, it's not magic, these are just normal strings. Instead of a string, I can use a variable. I can do any kind of combination. So that's kind of the point of why they make it so, why Active Record is so like, let's try and be just normal Ruby. Because at that point you can connect it to anything. Like the Twitter gem gives you back a string. Active Record wants a string for the post title, so you just connect them straight. So instead of X, you could have like, I don't know, tweets.last.text. Ta-da! Okay, and actually let's just take a brief look at, if you go to the SQLite manager and hit the refresh thing. Oh, well that didn't work. Oh, okay. Yep. So now see your new posts in here. And from the database's perspective, this is totally, it doesn't know it came from Ruby, it doesn't know you're using Active Record, it doesn't know you're connecting to Twitter or whatever, it just knows, hey, I have the letters WOO. So there's that kind of tidy line of disconnect in the middle. Alright, so, bit of a summary. What have we got? So we connected to the database. We told Active Record, using a bit of magic, how to find the table and that we want it to become a Ruby object. And that's what this weird thing is. And now that it's a Ruby object, we can start using it just like we use the Twitter gem by saying, hey, give me this stuff or create this stuff. There's a million and one things that we can do with it. In fact, there really are a million things. Like there was that file I showed you. Every time I look at it, I find another thing. Like you can reread this for like months. And then on like day 57, you'll be like, oh wait, you can do dynamic finders. I don't even know what a dynamic finder is. There's that much stuff. I don't even know what some of it is. But there's like there's a few core things like the create and the first and last and the where. The where is like the kind of get me stuff that matches this. And so that's usually the kind of 2 or 3 that you use. The like you create stuff and then you say get me stuff that matches this pattern. And then the rest is just kind of fanciness, like ordering things. Okay. So where was I going with that? Okay, so let's just turn this thing into like a neater example. So again, this is going to be stuff we've seen before, but just to kind of reinforce what we did for the last 20 minutes. So, this post is currently only ever showing the first post. That's kind of rubbish. Let's change it to add posts equals post.all. And then, this bit is new and weird. We're going to render a template with a slightly unusual name. And don't worry about this syntax too much. It's one of these, we're using it because the ERB thing demands it. It's kind of, we're taking a string and a symbol and smushing them together. It's a bit weird. It's a pattern that doesn't come up very often, but sometimes you need to use it to make something work, which is this case. But the reason why it's this weird format is I want to be able to put all of my posts views into a folder. Because if I end up with a big app, I've got like posts and users and comments and pictures and blah 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 blah. You have like 50 different like sets of templates. And index is a name which I'll come back to. So you should, inside views, have a folder called posts, and then that's index. For the moment, just take it one step at a time, print out some text, and make sure it appears. If you've got that, we can do the usual, oops, not that one, posts.each to post. Yep, so the URL is still posts. Which I'll come back to that again in a second. Give me a second, I'll come back. Okay, and again, just to recap stuff that we did a couple of days ago. Whenever you're doing each, in the beginning it's good to have plural thing, and then singular. So then inside the loop we know we're acting on one post. We don't want an equal symbol here, but we do want an equal symbol here because we're not going to print out the each directly but inside the each we're going to print stuff out. Inside that each we're free to put whatever HTML we want. I'm just going to go with H3. Let's change this. Index.erb. And if everything worked, you should see a kind of blog posty blog thing.
Index needs to be in post, yeah? Index is in that posts folder?
Yep. You can actually just see at the top left of mine, it's not so clear.
Right, right.
Small. The index has to be in block.
Yes. Don't save it. Because otherwise it would save it. Ooh, perfect.
Yay!
Right, and I'll just write something down. Okay, yours works. Yours good? Okay, so everybody good. Alright, cool. So, a few minor things I will come back to there that I forgot. But yeah, so to summarize, we have a page, we say get me all the posts, and then we shove it to a template. And that's pretty similar to what we did with the tweets the other day. Right, so yeah, we did it with the Flickr. That we did go to an URL, get a photo, put it in an app variable, and then go to a template. So we can still use the exact same patterns we've been using before. Alright, a couple of things I forgot to mention. So again, these capital letters patterns, or the pattern of capital letters and plural with active record, you kind of just have to learn the hard way, which is kind of annoying. Because for example, so this one is capital P and singular, the database is lowercase and plural. That kind of comes up. This one is lowercase and plural. I don't know, I don't think there's any particularly consistent rule. This one is definitely, anytime you want to do it in Ruby, what is this? What's that word? Like this is the kind of blueprinty, resourcey thing that you ask about posts. Like if I do .all or .where or .create, I need to do capital P post because I'm referring to this thing, and this thing is the connection to active record.
The classes aren't always capital.
I think classes are always capital letters.
Okay.
I think. I've never pushed it.
And the add posts, that's just a variable you set.
Yep.
You could have got it anything else.
Yep, I can call that anything.
And it just needs, okay, and then it gets reprised in the index file, or?
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah, and that's why we give it the at variable, because otherwise it would only exist in here.
Yeah.
So with an at, it exists in this whole
Gotcha.
like situation. And something. Oh, what was this? Yes, because there was another question about. We called the template post/index, but if we go to the URL post/index, it breaks. In this case, because there's no connection between what template we render and what URL we go to. And in the beginning, that's kind of a strange jump. So in this test, we could also do ERB post-index if we wanted. And I could, if I wanted to, if I created a test, have this one go to this. And yeah, where was I going with that? So yeah, I guess it's always to remember, in a way, to be really kind of, what's the word? I always use the word like dumb in a way, that if I'm going to an URL and I ever see this, oops, yeah, if I'm ever going to an URL and I see Sinatra doesn't see this ditty, it means it didn't find the URL. And the only part of the app that cares about URLs is this get line. So basically, if something happens with the URL, that means these lines are the only ones that can affect it. And the bit inside doesn't matter. Because I see that's a good point. If it can't find the URL, it never gets to here. So this line of code could be anything, because it hasn't even found the page to run the code. Which is, again, yeah, a little weird, but so it's more, I guess it's more like the responsibility is quite specific, that like these lines are responsible for the URLs, nobody else is. Okay, but anyway, so if something goes wrong with the URLs, check out those lines. A second thing that came up that I kind of forgot to mention. Earlier we had this. Get post, da 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 da. Problem is, now if we forget to delete the old one, stuff gets weird. Alright, so I'm gonna ask the browser is gonna ask for /posts, and suddenly we're now on the old one. Because what it does is when you ask for an URL, it goes through each get line until it finds the first one that matches. And if I have two, it just takes the first one because it goes, okay, yep, that'll do, I'll use that one. That can also be confusing if it happens by accident. Okay, so yeah, watch out for duplicates. Alright, but we have a working index. It's printing out stuff for real. Pretty cool. That's like halfway to a real blog. The next one we need is a form. So we want to be able to type them in and see them really appear. Or we were doing this create on the tux IRB thing, which is neat, but obviously your regular users can't use that. I'm trying to think what the easiest way of doing this is. Okay, let's do some boring setup and then we'll get to interesting things. So we're going to need 2 pages, get/post/new, and it's going to be ERB new create. Let you guys fiddle with that. And I'm deliberately using these words index, new, create, and later on there'll be a few others like edit and update, because this is a naming convention that Rails uses, and Rails uses it to keep it tidy, that when you have like a thing that follows like the regular pattern, like for posts you want to list them, create them and edit them. For users you want to list them, create them and edit them. For pictures you want to list them, create them and edit them. So Rails kind of enforces this naming structure just so that if you're on a new project and there's a new object like payment, you don't have to figure out like what did the last guy that worked on this project call it. And it seems a little strict in the beginning, but I quite like it because I know when I started doing it in Django, it doesn't enforce that. Everything had different names. It was like create underscore blog post, and then the next one was like make capital letter user, and there was never any pattern, so I could never really remember what was doing what. Whereas this way, when you learn the pattern, you're like, okay, if I want to create a new user, I go to the create thing, and you kind of just, you never have to worry where is that code. You're almost certain it's going to be in this place. And it works pretty well because most stuff follows that pattern pretty exactly. Alright. So, next bit, we need that new.erb. And so remember yesterday, or not yesterday, Friday, Friday, forms need 2 parts. There's one page to display the form and one page to process the form. And we're going to do that same pattern, that we're going to have one page to display the form for typing in the template or typing in the data, and then we're going to send it to somewhere else, and that's going to do the actual inserting it. And I mean, that kind of also makes sense because you have to do it on 2 stages of one to, you couldn't put it into the database on the first page because the user hasn't typed it in yet. So you need a form on one step and a second step for the other. Okay, but a bit more boring typing and then more explaining. Page 1, new post.
those paragraphs be closed or?
Yes, they should. So you should end up with /post/new and not exploding.
The body's name should also be title or?
Oh, no, yes, that I forgot as well. Oops. Yes, so these need to be named. They don't have to be named after the field, but it would be a good idea. I forgot because I copy pasted. Actually, that's a good point. Remember I was saying in the beginning, don't copy paste stuff, because that's what happens. You end up like changing one and then forgetting to change the other. Because I do it all the time.
So when we submit this form, we would go to post/create, right?
Yep.
That's what action stands for.
Yeah, good point. So action in a form is saying like, where do I want you to send the data? So if it worked and you fill it in from form, and you hit submit, you should end up on create. I don't know, it'll explode, that's fine. But you should see /posts create and then your content title equals something.
Submit query. What does it say submit query? Is that so automatic
Which
query?
bit?
In the new create.
Yeah, that's
Go to new. Go into post new.
it says submit
No,
query.
like in the go to
Instead of
Sinatra.
submit.
Oh, this?
For
Oh,
us.
okay, interesting. So
Yeah, I
submit
should.
query. It's actually.
Okay. Value. Go. Is this right? Yeah. Okay. So you can change that with value if you want.
But just saying kind of like a title name.
It was funny because it didn't do it last time we created forms. It only said submit, and now it says submit query.
Weird.
Mine just says submit.
Yeah.
Can you hit submit?
Lucky you.
Oh, can you spread the spaces between the
Yeah.
equals?
Between the equals,
Yeah.
all of them.
And the. And between
More?
the equals and the speech marks?
Yeah, I didn't do that last time.
Okay, that makes no difference. I have no idea what it says submit query. Weird.
Does it already know that it's going to go to a table, to a data?
No, it's just a weird that it shouldn't know anything. Okay, I have no idea why somebody gets submit
Maybe
query.
more magic involved.
Could be. Okay, very strange. Okay, but if you click it, you should see an URL like this.
Oh wait, are you using Firefox?
No.
Because I'm using Firefox now, and last time I didn't. So maybe just Firefox does a different standard reaction.
Point. Oh, I've. Aha, okay, if you're getting submit query, it's because you're in Firefox.
It's like the free
Interesting.
settings of Firefox.
Yeah, which is a little odd. Oh well, okie dokie. Okay. So has everybody got create and a bunch of stuff? Actually, let's just check something. Oh, because mine is broke. Title. Okay, so conveniently we see an error page, and that's actually kind of good, because you can look down here and it will tell you what it's managed to pull out of the URL. One neat thing when it gives you this error page, it kind of gives you some information about like the state of the app. Most of this stuff is really complex, boring things that you'll never look at, but one that is neat is it tells you what are the get parameters, which are these. So it's managed to pick up the body and the title.
But you create a empty creator TRV for that, because I don't get the error. I just
Yeah,
get the standard error. Like like
Join.
sinatra error.
For some reason the Sinatra reloader kills the error sometimes. I don't really know why. Oh.
Standard one.
You should have /post create. Well, anyway. So we should have /post create in here.
Yeah, I have that. But I don't have a create.erv file yet, but you don't either, right?
Let's actually, do we need this? I'm not sure we do. Maybe let's comment that out for a second. Just kind of a think. Okay, let's comment that out because I don't think we actually need it. Yeah, we don't need it. Okay. But, so we went to the URL we ended up on was post create, and it had the data. In general, to get the data out, remember before, oh, I got rid of it. We did, so with the Flickr one, we got it using the params. We can do the same thing now. So params always exists and contains the variables from the URL. And I'm gonna do it in like way more steps than is really necessary, just for the hell of it. Body equals params. So now we've pulled them out into normal variables, and at this point it's just a totally normal Ruby string that should contain the content. But that post create thing that we had before, oops, wrong way. Dun, 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 dun. So the syntax for post create before was like post create, field name value, field name value, field name value. And conveniently now we have values. So we can do post dot create title body.
So could we put the params in there?
Yes, actually we could just put this straight here. Take a pick. I'm gonna change mine. You don't have to if you don't want to. Actually, that's maybe a little bit clearer. So maybe it is better with using the params in here. And it looks a little bit nicer on multiple lines. Feel free to do that, but it works on a single line as well.
It's a little bit easier to see what you want to do with post create.
Yep, exactly. Well, especially if you've got like 10 of these. If it's all on one line, it's huge. So that will create it. I was going to do a template, but I think I'm going to be lazy and just redirect to /posts. So instead of displaying it on this page, at the end we're going to say, okay, just go to that other page, because that was the index page that will list them all. So we should see it listed there. And I will explain what redirect does exactly in a bit. Can I make it smaller? Yeah, here we go. But that means if it all works, you should see what came from the form. So you should be able to go to /posts new. Hello. And whatever you typed in should pop up.
Do I need to restart as well?
No, should be alright.
I forgot slash. The slash in the gap.
Wait, no, doesn't show the newest one anymore. Well, actually, no, to be honest, I'm going to
It should be on create this before, sorry, on /news.
yeah, that's what I'm trying. That's why I entered stuff.
Capital letter here. But no capital letter there. So I think probably no capital letter here is a good idea.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering about that because in the new mask, it doesn't really change it.
Before you click anything, let's just jump here for a second.
Let's see.
Cool. Okay, so is everybody got it working? Alright. What was I talking about? Alright, so one minor thing about this redirect. So before we were rendering ERB or returning some text. This is like neither. This is kind of saying, it's actually an instruction to the browser that like when you get to the end of this page, start a whole new request. It's like totally start from the beginning, forget everything that happened here and go to this page as if the user had typed it in. So this create never has to worry about templates, and vice versa, posts doesn't have to worry that you came from create, because it's like the browser started from scratch. And that's quite a handy pattern if you're on a page where you really can't be bothered displaying anything. Like the create, we don't really need a create page if we can display it somewhere else.
Could you have a page that shows like a post was created and that stays for like a few minutes and then redirects the user to?
Yes. Getting the message is a little tricky. Well, actually, I can't remember if it's in Sinatra. Okay, but we'll get halfway there. Because probably instead of the index, it might be better to go to like the individual post page. But we don't have an individual post page, so let's create one. Or like, so if we've got 10,000 posts, they all get shown in /posts. But if we want to go to one, we need another page. So let's go to post/id. Oops, not that. I'm going to call this one posts/show. I'll just bring up this. Oops. And I want, when I go to crap. So this, no, is it woohoo? This first post somebody is post number 1. So I want, when I go to post number 1, that I just see that post. And how do I explain this bit? So we need post equal to something. So type the at post, but not the something. Because again, this is like the connecting the parts thing. That like, I know in the URL I have the number 1, and I want the actual like Ruby post object for number 1. So I need to put something here to connect the two and like get me a variable with that thing. And conveniently for, oh, where's it gone? So just in Tux, I can show you it. So I can say post.find something. So get me the post with this exact number, and I get back first post somebody. I can do the same thing with number 4. Okay, so let's narrow it down a bit. I need to have post.find and then something. And I need to put in a number.
And now it's post singular because it's a different variable for single one.
Because we're going to get back 1 post.
One post list.
Yeah, so this got back a list, and this is going to get back 1. So it's just a hint for later on when we're using it, it's only going to be 1.
Can we use params now? Yeah.
Bingo. And in this case, because we put ID up here, it's just going to be ID. And I guess the point I'm trying to get out of that is that the connection isn't magic. The post.find just takes a number, and params ID will look here and pull the number out of the URL. Actually, so I'm just gonna. So I'm gonna do it in extra steps just to make it more clear. Well, okay, yeah, maybe you guys do this too. I don't know. Because definitely in the beginning you're like, how does this thing connect to that thing? And kind of almost the answer is that it doesn't, in a way. It's like you talk to one thing to get a value that you know is very simple and sensible, and then you take that simple, sensible variable and give it to the next step. So in a way, the question of how do I connect thing A to thing B, it's kind of a stupid answer, but like one step at a time. You kind of take the big complex weird thing. So we've got like the URLs, we've got Sinatra, and they do a million different weird things, but we break it down until we just get a single variable with a single number. And a single number is easy to understand. The URL thing was complicated. Now we've got it into something simple. And now again we've got this crazy mad active record thing, and it does a million different bits, and there's all these moving parts, but I know find just wants a simple number.
And ID, it knows to pull from the database with the ID column.
Yes, so find always just looks in
Phone number,
yeah, it looks in this ID column for the number that you give it.
Okay, find always looks from the database. It's not the parameter.
Yep. Well, I mean that's the split that at this point we could delete the params and it wouldn't matter because ID is now just a number. Yeah, and that's a deliberate split because we don't want we don't want active record in the database to have to worry about URLs, because that would make active record really, really complicated. And if you ever stopped using URLs, like I don't know, maybe you made an Android app or something where there are no URLs, it would be going, where are the URLs? Now that we've split it, find just gets given one number. So yeah, kind of weird concept to wrap your head around, but it's simplifies stuff eventually. Okay, what am I writing?
So these are just chronologic?
Yes. Those check boxes we clicked at the beginning when we did a new table. When we did ID, we what? Why can I not do this? Oh yeah, it needs to be a number. One of them was auto inc. Well, one of them was primary key, which is a database word for like, it's the ID basically. And auto inc means every time you add one, every time you create a new thing, just set the value. That's a good point. So whenever we did create, we didn't tell it what the next ID was. We just like leave it to figure it out. And that's really good because it will always be reliable. There are important things with that, but we'll come back to it. So yeah, we never have to worry about AD. We also never have to worry about this created at thing. Oh, is this gonna work? Yep, cool. The created at and updated are also magic words for active record. And if it sees those fields, so we never told it post created at, active record will go, okay, I've seen those fields, I will fill them in myself. So that last post was created at, I don't know, I think the clock is wrong somehow. It's not getting the right time zone. Oh well, anyway, it's filled in a time, it's close enough. That can be very handy because then when you've got like 6 million blog posts and I don't know, something happens, you can go, okay, what happened on Tuesday at 2 p.m? Oh, someone created a blog post.
Isn't it like that's something you could search for as well, looks at it.
Yes, searching for dates with SQL is a bit annoying because they have these crazy formats, but it can be done. Or basically every time you want to do it, you just Google SQL search by date. And you inevitably get 600 people on Stack Overflow going, how do I query date time, blah blah blah, and there'll be some dude going, hey, do it this way. So yeah. Oh, it's quite neat. You can do between date A and date B.
Okay, and that's an SQL command.
Yeah, you can do it with the active record thing. Actually, let's do active record search by create date. Okay, that's weird. Oh, this is not. No, active record, not active directory. That is something totally different. Active record search by date. And okay, you can do ranges. That's not very good. Anyway, if you search enough, you'll get stuff. Post created at the syntax gets a little bit crazy on some of the wheres. Let's answer an answer. Yeah, so you can do stuff like where the created at is greater than, okay, the beginning of the day for the current time zone. Or okay, anyway, you get the idea. So the exactly how you do it is a little bit fiddly, but dates are one of the more fiddly things. Alright, so where were we? So we are on the show page. We want to show one single post when we go to /post/1 to show post number 1. And at this point, I'm pretty sure we've got the right variable. So we should be able to create a show page. What do I want? So if you create a page called postshow.erb, h1, we can start filling in the HTML. So if you guys type this too. Post.body. So again, same pattern as the last one. We just take the app variable and we print it out. Unless you get this. Break time.
So usually then when you look for something, you would normally type the title, right? As a user.
It's up to you. Okay, let's do that in a second.
Because like as a user you don't know the ID of your, I mean like if you're on someone else's blog and you want to look for a title,
Yes.
probably, or a keyword, I just wonder how that works with the search field, but it's probably
50-50.
you'll probably do that later.
Yeah, I think later, because it can be done, but it has fiddly side effects.
Yeah, okay.
Because if someone has like a 20-word long title that has like exclamation marks and Chinese characters, then it's hard to type in.
Mm-hmm.
Usually we won't get them to type this, we'll give them a link, which we'll actually do in a second. Oops. Okay, did everybody get this bit? Okay, because I want to do 2 quick things and then we'll take a break. Because one was a good question, like how does the user know what to type in? What would be much more sensible is if on the posts they could click a link.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just jump there. And let's change the title to be an anchor. Href equals post.id. Oh, actually mine is going to be temporarily horribly wrong. And I'm going to fix it. So I think we need to go to /posts/post ID. I think that's right. That S is not right. So if I just do view source for a second, so the end result is a normal anchor, and it just builds a href to the URL that we would have typed in. So if you give that a go, you should see a link. When you click on it, you should see the correct post. Okay, everybody getting that?
So if we go to just posts.
Yep. So yes, in general we're definitely missing still a lot of stuff. So all the navigation and things are still gone. But we're going to build up those fine details.
So if I did this, then it would.
Yes.
But you shouldn't do that.
Well, my country, was that a question mark? You can put that there, and it will make it, we
Okay.
can sit.
Okay, so if I do this, then it will still work.
You need to
Oh,
save it then. Alright, actually first, does it?
The first
Oh, I see. Well, let's go like this. It's all yellow, which is a current memory switch marks.
Okay, this is to here, between that. Okay, this one should have it.
Good. Is this working pretty well? Then do you use us?
Go back to here. That's it.
Oh, it's not getting the ID. Do ID here. Post ID.
I mean, should jump to the number of to the ID.
Oh, ITV.
Still not.
Then no equal symbol. Alright, try the equal symbol, I think that'll work. Okay, did you get it working?
Yeah.
Cool, okay. Cool. Alright. And then there was one last other bit of tidying. I think maybe on this redirect, we want to redirect to the individual post. So let's change that a little. We can store, so when we do post create, well, okay, so we want to do posts, but we would then need to do the same thing of tell it what ID to go to. So this is whenever we've just filled in the form, and we hit create, instead of redirecting to the index, I will get rid of this, I want to redirect to the show page. But that means we need to know the ID to redirect to. But we can get that out of the post that we just created. So we store it in a variable, and then do post.id, and it should now know what post to go to. I hope. So, you don't really need to do that, it's just a little bit of tidiness. Oh, actually, if you go to new, there's a very good chance it will break. Okay, so bearing in mind line 16 and line 23, can anyone tell me why it's now breaking? Oh, actually, I'll try and bring this up a bit.
Why did you?
Maybe something like, let's do this like post dot last, and then I don't know, this kind of, or yes, post dot last, and then somehow caller ID.
Well, one clue is saying couldn't find post with ID new.
Yeah, so it took the name of the URL.
Yeah. So it's for some strange reason, line 18. Oh, is it telling me this? Yeah, so it tells me on line 18 it breaks. So I went to post/new, and line 18 is breaking. So why did it go to line 18 instead of line 24? And the clues are line 16 and 23 are the important ones. So remember when you go to an URL, it will look through the gets until it finds one that matches.
Maybe because the variable is like with the f in front, so it counts for everything.
Not quite. Well, we wanted it to go here.
So just went to the number.
Yeah, exactly. It matched this one. It doesn't know the difference between post/1 and post/new.
Yeah.
It thinks it hits this one and just matches it and goes, oh, okay, you want to look for ID new, and then tries to look for, so it ends up jumping into this one because because remember, it's really stupid. So this is looking for /post/something, and it finds post/something and goes, ah, that's me, I'll take that. Then it takes the ID, puts it into here, and tries to find something with that ID, but the thing that it pulled out of the URL was the word new.
So we can just change the order then?
Yep, bingo. We need to change the order. Actually, I think putting post ID down at the bottom is the right answer, because otherwise we'd have the same problem with create and any other things that we make later. And it's a topic I'm going to come back to a few times, but again, the params thing is really not like, I don't know, when you say dumb, it sounds like it's a bad thing, but it's really simple. It's like if you say /ID, it doesn't care whether you give it an ID or a word or whatever, it just pulls this chunk out and puts it in the params as ID. Oh, I can't find it. So it doesn't care whether this is a number or whatever, it's a chunk. Okay, but anyway, it should all now work. Post proper redirect, and should end up on post/blah. Oh, that looks like it didn't work. Yep. Cool.
Because I thought if you put this in front, then it will count for the whole as well as here.
It will only count within that request.
Yeah, including the.
Yep. But in our create, we aren't ever using it ever again, or we're using it down at the line 30. But that's inside the same function, so it doesn't need to be like.
It won't. Yeah, I think it's the same.
Nope, it won't interfere. Okay.
My end word is 6, but it's not just because I don't have 6 posts.
Maybe. I don't know. Try 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's 2 words. I don't even think I have 3 words. I only have 2 posts.
Yes, 6 will probably work. If you go to the index, you'll see how many. So just the post
In
slash.
Sublime. Ah.
Or actually, post slash. So just slash posts.
Press everywhere.
So you got that too. So if you go to 6, it'll say couldn't find 6.
Okay.
Okay, I think let's take a break, because that was quite a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're about a third of the way through this